They say the worst betrayals don't come from enemies, they come from those you call family. And sometimes, the deepest wounds aren't caused by what's said, but by the silence that follows. Mornings in Brookdale always start the same way. I wake up at first light when most of my neighbors are still asleep. At 79, one appreciates each new day as a gift. To be honest though, some days are more like an ordeal, especially when my joints ache so badly that even walking to the bathroom becomes a feat. My little house on Linden Street isn't what it used to be. The wallpaper in the living room has faded over 30 years, and the wooden porch steps creak louder each spring. Thomas, my husband, was always going to fix them, but never got around to it before his heart attack. 8 years have passed, and I still talk to him, sometimes in the mornings telling him the news, as if he's just gone out to the garden and will be back soon. Those small talks, one-sided as they are, help me feel like he's still here with me. It's silly maybe, but it's what keeps the house from feeling entirely empty. This is the house where my children, Daniel and Erica, grew up. Everything here remembers their baby steps, their laughter, and their fights. Now it seems like those happy, noisy days never happened. Erica comes in once a month, always in a hurry, always looking at her watch. Daniel shows up more often, but only when he needs something, usually money or a signature on some paperwork. Every time, he swears he'll pay it back soon, but in 15 years, he's never paid it back. I stopped expecting repayment a long time ago. These visits feel more like business transactions than family moments. Today is Wednesday, the day I usually bake blueberry pie. Not for me, because I can't eat that much on my own. It's for Liam, my grandson, the only one in the family who visits me without an ulterior motive. Just to spend time with his old grandmother, drink tea, and talk about his college business. I hear the gate slam and I know it's him. Liam has a peculiar gait, light but a little clumsy, as if he's not used to his tall stature. Yet he inherited it from his grandfather. Grandma Helen, his voice comes from the doorway. I smell a specialty pie. Sure you do, I said, smiling, wiping my hands on my apron. Come on in, it's just about the right temperature. Liam leans over to hug me now. I have to tilt my head back to see his face. It's weird. When did he get so big? How's school going? I asked, sitting him down at the kitchen table. Still struggling with higher math. I got an A on my last exam, Liam said proudly, eating his pie. Professor Lang even asked me to work on a research project. I always knew you were smart, I pour his tea. Your grandfather would be proud of you. Liam is silent for a moment, staring out the window at the old apple tree. I know what he's thinking. Thomas taught him to climb it when he was only 7. Daniel yelled that we'd never do the kid any good, and Thomas just laughed. A boy's got to be able to fall down and get up. That tree still holds echoes of their laughter. It's weathered just like me, yet still standing. Grandma, have you decided what you're going to wear on Friday? Liam suddenly asks, returning to the pie. Friday? I look at him puzzled. What's going to be on Friday? Liam freezes with his fork in the air. A strange expression appears on his face, a mixture of surprise and confusion. Dinner. It's Dad and Mom's wedding anniversary, 30 years. They have reservations at Cedar Hill. Didn't Dad tell you? I slowly sit down across from him, feeling something chill inside. 30 years of my son's marriage is a significant date. Of course they should celebrate, but why am I hearing about it from my grandson and not Daniel himself? Maybe he was going to call, I answer, trying to keep my voice light-hearted. But inside, something sinks. A dull ache, not from age or arthritis, but from something far deeper. You know your father, always putting things off until the last minute. Liam looks uncomfortable, picking at the leftover pie with his fork. I guess he does, he agrees, without much conviction. We move on to other topics. Liam talks about his plans for the summer, about a girl named Grace he met at the campus library. I listen, nodding, asking questions, but my thoughts keep circling back to that dinner. I try to stay engaged in the conversation, but it's like a radio playing in the background, distant, muffled, while my mind loops around one persistent worry. Why hasn't Daniel called? Is he really planning to celebrate without me? When Liam leaves, promising to stop by over the weekend, I stand at the window for a long time, staring out at the empty street. In the house across the road, Mrs. Callahan, about my age, plays with her grandchildren. Her daughter comes every Wednesday, bringing the kids. They're noisy, running around the yard, and old Beatrice is glowing with happiness. The kind of joy that lights up your whole face without you even noticing it. I wish my children could be there too. My reflection in the glass catches me off guard. For a second, I barely recognize myself. The way my shoulders have curved in slightly, like I'm bracing against something unseen. There's a loneliness etched in the corners of my mouth, a hesitancy in my eyes. Was I too harsh when they were younger, or too lenient? Did I fail to teach them how to care for someone once the caring wasn't convenient? The phone rings, breaking my thoughts. I recognize Daniel's number immediately. Mom. It's him. His voice sounds a little strained. Hello, darling, I answer, trying to sound normal. How are you doing? I'm fine. Listen, I'm calling about Friday, so he was gonna ask me after all. I feel warm inside. Maybe I misjudged them. Maybe they've just been busy and hadn't gotten around to it yet. Claire and I were planning a little anniversary dinner, Daniel continues, but unfortunately, we're going to have to cancel. She caught some kind of virus. Fever, the whole thing. The doctor said she needs to stay home for at least a week. Oh, that's too bad, I say, genuinely saddened. Still, there's something in his voice that makes me uneasy. Is there anything I can do to help? I could bring over some chicken broth or… No, that's okay, Daniel interrupts quickly. We've got everything. I just wanted to let you know. We'll reschedule for another day when Claire is better. We'll be sure to call you. Of course, darling. Give her my best wishes for a speedy recovery. I will. Okay, Mom? I gotta run. I'll call you later. He hangs up before I can say anything else. The conversation leaves a strange aftertaste. Like sipping tea that's gone cold without realizing it. Something's wrong, but I can't quite place it. And yet the ache that creeps in feels so familiar, like an old wound you thought had closed, only to find it tender under pressure. Was I just a name on a calendar now? Something to be fit in later, when convenient? I spend the rest of the day flipping through old photo albums. Here's Daniel at 5 years old with a knocked-out front tooth and a proud smile. Here's Erica on her first bike. Thomas teaching them to swim in the lake. Christmas dinners when we all gathered together. When did that all change? When did my children grow so distant? That evening I call Erica, casually asking about Claire. To my surprise, she knows nothing about her sister-in-law's illness. Mom, I've got a lot to finish at the shop before the weekend, she says impatiently. If you want to know about Claire, you should call Daniel. But you're coming to their anniversary on Friday, right? I ask cautiously. The pause on the other end is too long. Oh, that's what you mean. Yeah, sure, Erica finally answers. Look, I really have to go. I'll talk to you later. Then the line goes dead. I stare at the phone, anxiety blooming inside me. They're hiding something, both of them. Thursday morning, I go to the local market. I don't really need groceries. I just need to stretch my legs and clear my head. The walls of my house feel like they're closing in lately. I need air, noise, something real. In the produce aisle, I run into Doris Milner, an old acquaintance who works at the same flower shop as Erica. Helen, it's been too long, she exclaims, giving me a warm hug. How's your health? Not bad for my age, I smile. Are you still working with Erica? I ask. Of course I am. Only tomorrow's my day off. Erica's taking the evening off for the family celebration. I hear 30 years is a big date. I nod, trying to hide my confusion. So dinner wasn't canceled? So Daniel lied to me. But why? When I get home, I sit in my chair for a long time, trying to figure it out. What's going on? Maybe they're planning a surprise. But then why the lies about Claire being sick? And why was Erica acting so strangely? The phone rings again, but it's not Daniel or Erica. It's Liam. Grandma? I forgot to ask, have you seen my blue notebook? I think I left it at your place last time. Let me see, I say, walking into the living room where Liam usually sits. I don't see it. Maybe it's in the kitchen, I add while I keep looking. Liam continues chatting. If you find it, can you give it to Dad tomorrow? He'll pick you up, right? I freeze, phone in hand. Pick me up? Well, yeah, for dinner at Cedar Hill. I can stop by if you want, but I have class until 6, so I'll be late for the start. I'm gripping the phone tighter now. Liam, honey, I think you're confused. Daniel told me the dinner was canceled. Claire is sick. Liam is silent. For a long time. Too long. Liam, are you there? I don't understand. Dad called me an hour ago asking if I could be at the restaurant by 7. Nobody canceled anything. I slowly sink into the couch. So that's how it is. They just decided not to invite me. My own son lied to me so I wouldn't come to the family gathering. Grandma, are you okay? Liam's voice sounds concerned. Yes, honey, I'm fine. I try to keep my voice calm. I must have misunderstood something. You know, at my age, you get confused sometimes. I'm sure it's some kind of misunderstanding. Do you want me to call my dad and find out? No, I answer quickly. There's no need. I'll talk to him myself. Don't worry. After the call ends, I sit in silence for a long time, looking at the framed photo of us all together, me, Thomas, the kids, smiling, happy. When did it all go wrong? When did I become a burden, someone better left at home than brought along to a family event? Resentment and bitterness rise inside me, but I force myself to breathe deeply. Now is not the time for tears. Now is the time to think. If my children don't want me at the family celebration, then somewhere along the way, I became a stranger to them. And I need to understand why. I walk over to the closet, where I keep old letters and documents. Among them are Thomas's will, the insurance policy, the deed to the house. Daniel has hinted more than once that I should sign the house over to him. For your own safety, he said. Erica once suggested I sell it and move into a nursing home. They'll take better care of you than we can, she said. I always refused, sensing there was something else behind those suggestions. And now, I think I'm starting to see what it is. That evening, the phone rings. This time, it's Claire, my daughter-in-law. Her voice is cheerful and energetic for someone supposedly bedridden with a high fever. Helen, honey, how are you? Daniel said he called you about Friday? Yes, I reply in a steady voice. He said you were sick and the dinner was canceled. That's right, Claire says a little too quickly. It's a terrible virus, just knocked me off my feet. The doctor said I need at least a week of bed rest. I hope you feel better soon, I say. Say hello to the others. The others? I can hear the tension creeping into her voice. Yeah, Erica, Liam, they're upset about the canceled holiday, aren't they? Oh yes, of course, they're all very upset, but it can't be helped. Health is more important. Aren't they? I ask. Oh yes, of course, they're all very upset, but it can't be helped. Health is more important. Well, Helen, I've got to take my medication now. Feel better, Claire says. I hang up the phone and look out the window at the darkening sky. Well, now I have confirmation. They're planning dinner without me. They didn't even bother to come up with a believable lie. I pull the dark blue dress from the closet, the one I haven't worn since Thomas's funeral. I try it on in front of the mirror. It still fits well, though I've lost weight over the years. My hands tremble slightly as I smooth down the fabric. So many memories woven into this cloth. I can almost smell the faint scent of lilies from that day. The reflection staring back at me doesn't look like the woman I used to be. There's a hollowness in my eyes, a quiet ache no one bothers to see anymore. I touch the necklace Thomas gave me on our last anniversary, and the cold metal sends a shiver up my spine. If my children think they can just erase me from their lives, they're sorely mistaken. Helen Whitaker hasn't said her last word yet, and tomorrow night promises to be interesting. Very interesting. I've been up all night, not because of joint pain, though that has crept in, not because of the usual insomnia that plagues people my age. I was awake because of the thoughts, spinning and circling. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw them. Daniel, Erica, Liam, sitting around that table, laughing, raising their glasses. Happy to be rid of their old mother for the night. Their laughter echoes in my mind like distant thunder, mocking, dismissive, painful. Each image that flashes behind my eyelids slices a little deeper. How quickly they've locked me out of their lives. Like I'm some relic from the past, to be boxed away. Forgotten. Friday morning comes and the sky is overcast. Heavy clouds hang over Brookdale like a mirror of my mood. I make tea, but it goes cold before I even take a sip. I don't feel like eating. Something in me is frozen, waiting for a decision I haven't made. What will I do tonight? Stay home like they planned? Then my gaze lands on the photo of Thomas above the mantel. He's looking at me with a gentle smile, his head tilted slightly to the side, that familiar gesture that always meant he had something important to say. What would you do, Thomas? I ask him silently. And I can almost hear his answer. Don't let them trample on your dignity. Helen, you deserve better than that. His voice, imagined or not, steadies me. It wraps around my bruised heart like a protective coat. I walk to the window. Outside, Mrs. Callahan is walking her dachshund. She spots me and waves. I wave back, thinking about how few people are left in my life who are actually glad to see me. The phone rings, jolting me back to the moment. It's Daniel. "Mom, good morning," he says, sounding just a little too cheerful. "How are you feeling?" "Fine," I answer. "How's Claire? Is she any better?" There's a slight pause. I can almost picture him trying to remember what lie he told me last night. "No, she's the same, still in bed with a fever. The doctor says it could take a while." "That's a shame," I reply, feigning sympathy. "I was thinking of making her a chicken pot pie, bringing it over. Nothing like a home-cooked meal for a cold." No, you don't have to," Daniel says quickly. "We have everything, really. I just wanted to check in, see if you need anything. Maybe you're out of medication?" "Oh, that's it." He's checking to see if I'm staying home tonight, making sure. "Thanks, son. I've got everything," I say. "I'm going to spend the evening reading. I've been meaning to reread some Agatha Christie for ages." "That's a great idea," he says, clearly relieved. "Okay, Mom, I have to head to work. If you need anything, call me." I hang up and glance at the clock. 10 o'clock. Plenty of time left before dinner tonight. Time to think, how did things get to this point? When did everything change? When did my children stop seeing me as a mother and start viewing me as a burden? Maybe it started after Thomas died. Back then, Daniel and Erica used to come every day, help with the arrangements, the paperwork. But soon their visits became less and less. First once a week, then once a month. Erica was always in a rush, always checking her watch. Daniel came more often, but his visits usually coincided with requests for money. "Mom, it's Claire's birthday. I want to get her a necklace, but we're tight on cash this month." "Mom, we've got a leaky roof. We need repairs immediately, but all the money went to pay Liam's college fees." "Mom, I've invested in a promising new project, but we need to reborrow just for now." I always gave, not because I believed his stories. They'd become less and less believable over the years, but because I wanted to feel that they needed me. Even if it was just for money, it meant they came to me. And in those moments, I could pretend, just for a little while, that I still mattered, that I was still relevant in their lives. I pulled an old notebook out of the closet, the one where I'd recorded all of Daniel's loans over the past 15 years. It had grown into a sizable amount, money he'll never pay back, and we both know it. It's different with Erica. She never asks for money outright, but every time I go to her flower shop, she insists I buy the most expensive bouquet. "Mom, you don't want people thinking I can't provide my own mother with decent flowers, do you?" And I always buy. Not because I needed flowers, but because I longed for her approval, some shred of connection that went beyond roses and orchids. Then there was the issue of the medication. 6 months ago, the doctor prescribed me new blood pressure pills. Expensive, but effective. Daniel made a scene about it. "Mom, are you out of your mind? $400 a month for pills? That's insane. Let's find cheaper alternatives." I tried to explain that other medications don't work for me, that I could have allergic reactions, but he wouldn't listen. Erica backed him up. "Mom, you have to be more frugal. We all have expenses." And this was coming from people who upgraded their phones monthly, who vacationed in the Bahamas and proudly showed off their new car. The hypocrisy was hard to swallow. Their comforts were necessities, but my health was negotiable. My thoughts were interrupted by the doorbell. Grace, Liam's girlfriend, stood on the front step, a sweet, shy girl with red hair and freckles. "Hello, Mrs. Whitaker," she said, nervously fidgeting with the strap of her bag. "Liam said he might have left his notebook here?" "Yes, dear, come in," I replied. "I was just going to look for it. Would you like some tea?" While I made the tea, Grace looked around the living room at the photos. "Is that Liam as a child?" she asked, pointing at a picture of a 5-year-old boy holding a fishing rod. "Yes, his first fishing trip with his grandfather," I smiled, handing her a cup. "He caught the tiniest little fish, but you'd have thought it was a shark from how proud he was." Grace laughed, and for a moment, the house felt young and alive again. Like time had bent backward, letting a sliver of the past seep into the present. "Mrs. Whitaker," she said suddenly, "Liam is very fond of you." He talks about you all the time, your stories, how you taught him to bake pies. I felt tears gathering, but held them back. He's a good boy, the only one who... I hesitated, not wanting to speak ill of my children in front of a stranger. He looks so much like his grandfather. Grace helped me find Liam's notebook. It had slipped beneath the couch cushion. As she was leaving, she turned back in the doorway. "I'll see you tonight. Liam said you'd be at Cedar Hill too." I smiled faintly. "We'll see. I have a bit of a headache. Not sure I'll make it." I lied, though not to hurt her, just to soften the truth that had started to feel unbearably sharp. After Grace left, I stood at the window for a long time, watching her drive away. Sweet girl, sincere. She has no idea that I wasn't invited to the family reunion, that my own son lied to me so I wouldn't come. The decision came suddenly. I looked at my watch. It was nearly 2 p.m. Dinner was still 5 hours away. Plenty of time to get ready. I pulled out the dark blue dress. I'd tried it on yesterday. It still fit well, though I'd lost weight over the years. The low-heeled shoes I'd worn at Erica's wedding. The pearl necklace Thomas had given me for our 30th anniversary. I wasn't going to sit at home feeling sorry for myself. I needed to see for myself how my children were celebrating without me. I had to make sure this wasn't some misunderstanding, but a deliberate choice on their part. At 5 p.m., I hailed a cab. The driver, a young man with tattoos on both arms, glanced at me with surprise when I gave him the destination. "Cedar Hill? Really, Grandma? That's where the prices are." "I know the prices, young man," I replied firmly. "And I'm not your grandmother." He shrugged and didn't ask another question. I stared out the window the entire way, watching the streets of Brookdale shift from my modest neighborhood of small homes to downtown with its sleek glass and concrete buildings. Cedar Hill sat on the outskirts, nestled in a picturesque spot by the river. It was just starting to get dark when the cab pulled up to the restaurant. I asked the driver not to pull up to the front, but to stop just a bit to the side. "Wait for me here, please," I said, handing him the fare. "I won't be long." Cedar Hill was the most exclusive restaurant in Brookdale. A 2-story red brick building wrapped in greenery with a terrace that overlooked the river. Only the most important events were celebrated here. Wedding anniversaries, engagements, high-stakes business deals. I didn't go through the entrance. Instead, I walked around the building to the guest parking lot. I saw their cars right away. Daniel's silver Lexus, Erica's red Ford, Liam's old Honda. They were all here. All of them, except me. The sting of that realization knocked the air from my lungs. This wasn't an oversight, not a scheduling error. They had truly chosen to celebrate without me, gone as far as to lie to keep me away. I walked slowly toward the restaurant windows. The curtains were mostly drawn, shielding the interior from view, but one panel hadn't been closed all the way. There was a narrow gap. I stood in the shadow of a tree, watching through that gap. They were seated around a large round table in the center of the dining room. Daniel at the head, Claire beside him, healthy, glowing, without a single sign of illness. Erica was there with her husband, Liam and Grace. A few others I didn't recognize, probably Daniel and Claire's friends. They were laughing, raising champagne glasses, enjoying the evening, completely unaware of me. A waiter appeared with a massive seafood platter. Then another with an ornate meat arrangement. Bottles of expensive wine were already on the table. I knew the cost of this restaurant. A dinner like that could easily cost as much as a month's rent for a modest apartment. "We're tight on money, Mom." "Could you help with the bills, Mom?" "These medications are too expensive. Let's find something cheaper." All this time they had been lying, pretending to scrape by, pleading for help with urgent needs, while spending hundreds on fine dining, vacations, and luxury vehicles. I watched Daniel raise his glass for a toast. Laughter followed. Claire kissed him on the cheek. Erica added something and more laughter erupted, and then I remembered. Last year I'd asked Daniel to help fix a leak in my roof. He said it wasn't a good time, that he was dealing with financial problems. I waited 3 months, until the roof leaked so badly I had to place buckets on the floor to catch the water. I ended up hiring a handyman myself, gave up almost all of my savings. And when I had a mild heart attack last winter, Erica couldn't come to the hospital because she had an important order at the flower shop. Liam sat up with me all night, holding my hand, and now they're all together. merry, happy, celebrating, without me. It's like I'm not even alive anymore. Like I've been edited out of the family story, replaced by flowers and table settings and social niceties. I notice Liam looking around, like he's searching for someone. Then he leans over to Grace and asks something. She shakes her head. They talk for a moment, and a concerned look settles on Liam's face. He pulls out his phone, checks the screen, then slides it back into his pocket. Just then, the waiter brings out a huge cake with candles. Everyone claps and laughs. Daniel puts his arm around Claire. They kiss. 30 years together. 30 years, and they couldn't find a seat at the table for the woman who gave birth to Daniel and raised him. A tear slides down my cheek. I wipe it away with an irritated gesture. Now is not the time for tears. Now is the time for decisions. Stepping away from the window, I walk slowly toward the restaurant entrance. A young man in uniform, probably the manager or maitre, stands at the door. "Good evening, ma'am," he says politely. "Do you have a reservation?" "I'm here to see the Whitaker family," I answer. "They're celebrating their wedding anniversary." He checks the list on his clipboard. "Yes, they're in the main hall." "Are you?" He pauses, looking at me curiously. "I'm Daniel Whitaker's mother," I say firmly. "Helen Whitaker." "Oh, I beg your pardon, Mrs. Whitaker." His demeanor shifts instantly. "Please, come in, your family is already here." "Your family," I think bitterly as I step into the restaurant's spacious lobby. The family that didn't want me here. The family that lied to me. The people who claimed to love me but never made space for me, except in their memories or financial needs. But in just a moment, they'll see me. And it'll be a night they'll remember for a long time. Because Helen Whitaker is not the kind of woman you can toss aside like some old unwanted thing. It's time my children understood that. I take a deep breath, square my shoulders, and walk steadily toward the doors of the main hall. Standing just outside them, I pause for a moment. Laughter, music, the clinking of glasses, sounds of celebration filter even through the heavy oak doors. One step, and I'd ruin their perfect evening. Should I do it? Should I turn around and walk away, preserving the last shred of my dignity? But something inside me, some iron thread that's run through my entire life, wouldn't let me turn back. I'm not the type to retreat. I never have been. Even when Thomas died, leaving me with crushing medical bills, I didn't crumble. I didn't ask my children for help, though I could have. I handled it on my own, because that's who I am. Because dignity isn't something you bargain for, it's something you protect. I can handle this too. But I wasn't going to burst in like a storm. No, too easy, too expected. I wanted this evening to be a lesson they'd never forget. "Mrs. Whitaker?" A voice behind me makes me flinch. I turn. Standing there is a tall man in his 60s, neatly groomed gray beard, kind gray eyes. He's dressed in an impeccable dark suit, a small gold pin in the shape of a willow branch on his lapel, the symbol of the restaurant. "Louis." I couldn't believe my eyes. Louis Quinlan in person. He smiled and gave a slight bow. "I'm glad you remember me." "How could I forget?" I replied. Louis Quinlan was a legend in Brookdale, a former chef who had opened the most successful restaurant in town. But to me, he'd always be the shy boy from across the street, the one who used to borrow books and sneak over for slices of my blueberry pie. "You haven't changed a bit," I said, though that wasn't exactly true. The boy had grown into a commanding man. Time had etched its lines on his face, but his eyes were still the same. "But you, Helen," he said with old-world charm, "have only grown more beautiful." That kind of gallantry, the kind that doesn't sound insincere, had always been his way. "Blue has always been your color," he added. I touched my pearl necklace instinctively. For the first time that evening, I didn't feel like a bitter old woman. I just felt like a woman who still mattered. A woman who hadn't been entirely erased by time or neglect. "Are you alone?" Louis asked, glancing around the room. "I thought you were coming with your son and his family. They're celebrating their anniversary tonight, aren't they?" "Oh, so you know about that?" I asked, trying to sound casual. "Of course," he said. "I personally helped plan the event. 30 years. It's a big occasion. I wanted it to be perfect." I felt my throat tighten. The word perfect stung, as if the absence of a mother made it more so. Louis must have noticed the shift in my expression because the warmth in his smile faded into concern. "Is something wrong, Helen?" I wanted to lie. say nothing was wrong, that I was just running late. But I couldn't. There had been too many lies already. I wasn't invited, I said softly. My son told me the dinner was cancelled because Claire was sick, but I found out the truth by accident. The look of genuine outrage on Louis's face made me feel unexpectedly grateful. Like someone finally saw what I was too proud to say out loud. How much it hurt. There must be some mistake, he said firmly. Some misunderstanding. Daniel, he couldn't. He could, I interrupted, and he did. I saw them through the window. They're having a lovely time, without me. Louis frowned, his eyes darkening. That's unacceptable, he said. The tone in his voice left no room for doubt. Absolutely unacceptable. He extended his hand. Let me escort you in, Helen. The mother of the guest of honor should not be left standing in the hallway. I hesitated. It was one thing to face a confrontation alone. It was quite another to pull someone else into it. Louis, I don't want to cause problems for your restaurant. The only problem here is the disrespect shown to a parent, he said sharply. And I won't tolerate that in my establishment. If I may? He offered his hand again, and this time I took it. His touch was warm and steady, like an anchor in stormy waters. It made me feel less alone, just for a moment. Like I was no longer invisible. How do you want to do this? Louis asked as we paused outside the doors to the main hall. Walk in quietly, or would you prefer something a bit more impactful? I hesitated again. I didn't want a scene, didn't want to shout or cry or throw blame around. That would be too easy. That's what they probably expected, that I'd cause a fuss or fall apart. Then they could chalk it up to senility or emotional instability. They'd say I was making a scene. No, I wasn't giving them that satisfaction. I want to go in quietly, I said, like the honored guest I was supposed to be. No announcement, no spectacle, just walk in. Louis nodded approvingly. Perfect choice. Elegance always outshines drama. He gave my hand a gentle squeeze. Ready? I took a deep breath and nodded. Ready. Louis opened the doors and we stepped into the hall. For a split second, the room seemed to still, my senses catching up with the shift. There was a low hum of conversation, the gentle clinking of silverware, a soft jazz melody floating in the background. I felt the warmth of the lights, the brush of air-conditioned coolness against my cheek. And eyes, dozens of them, turning toward the entrance, curious, some surprised. I stood a little straighter, tightened my grip on Louis's arm. This was it. No turning back. The first thing I noticed was the sheer abundance of flowers. White and cream roses, lilies, orchids. They were everywhere. Flowers. In tall vases on the tables, strung in garlands across the walls, even trailing from the ceiling, giving the illusion of a blooming garden. The soft glow of crystal chandeliers shimmered across the silverware and fine crystal glasses, creating an almost magical atmosphere. My family's table was at the center of the room, a large round table, decorated more lavishly than the rest. In the middle sat a birthday cake. Daniel was at the head of the table, wearing a dark gray suit I'd never seen before. Next to him was Claire, in a sleek burgundy dress and a sparkling new necklace, an anniversary gift, no doubt. Erica and her husband were there. Liam and Grace, too. And a few other people I didn't recognize, friends, perhaps, of Daniel and Claire. They didn't notice us right away, too absorbed in the toast Daniel was giving. He spoke about love, about overcoming challenges, about the strength of family and mutual support. The irony of his words struck like a dull blade. Talk of family unity from the son who deliberately excluded his own mother. Louis led me directly to their table. We walked slowly, with quiet dignity. I could feel the stares from other guests in the room, but I ignored them. My focus was on one thing only, my family. Liam noticed me first. His eyes widened in shock, and he twitched as if to stand, but something held him back. Then Grace, sitting beside him, turned pale and tugged at his sleeve. Daniel was still talking, oblivious to the shifting tension in the room. Then Erica glanced up and froze, her hand halfway to her glass. One by one, their eyes found me. Their faces changed. Surprise, confusion, and then, unmistakably, fear. Yes, fear. Not fear of me, but of what my presence might do to their perfect image. Fear of a scene, of a scandal. Fear of being embarrassed in front of their guests. Fear that the illusion of harmony they'd built so carefully was about to crack. Finally, Daniel, sensing the change in the room, turned around, and his voice faltered mid-sentence as he saw me. Louis stepped forward. Apologies for the interruption, Mr. Whitaker, he said, voice smooth but edged with steel. It seems your mother arrived a little late for the celebration. I took the liberty of escorting her to your table. The silence was thick enough to touch. Everyone stared. Mom, Daniel finally said, forcing out the word, his face as pale as the tablecloth. But you said you were staying home. I changed my mind, I said calmly. I decided I wanted to congratulate my son and daughter-in-law on 30 years of marriage. It's a meaningful milestone. I kept my tone even, but inside my heart beat like a war drum. This was my moment, not for revenge, but for dignity. Louis pulled out a chair for me, between Liam and a woman I didn't recognize. Likely one of Claire's friends. Thank you, Louis, I said as I took my seat. You've always been so thoughtful. My words were soft, but layered with gratitude for his presence, his timing, his quiet strength. Always at your service, Helen, he said with a slight bow. Then, turning to the others, he added, I'll have another appetizer brought out, and perhaps a bottle of our finest champagne, on the house, of course. With that, he exited, leaving behind a weighty silence. Daniel was the first to recover. Mom, he said, adopting a strained, cheerful tone. What a surprise. We thought you weren't feeling well. I feel perfectly fine, I answered, holding his gaze. Claire, on the other hand, seems to have made a miraculous recovery. Just this morning, she was supposedly running a high fever. Claire flushed and looked down at her plate. She had never been a convincing liar. Yeah, I felt better around lunchtime. She murmured. A miracle, indeed, I nodded, especially considering Dora Simmons saw you at the supermarket yesterday, looking perfectly healthy. Erica set her glass down hard. Mom, she said, voice taut like a wire, maybe this isn't the time. Don't, dear, I cut in, turning toward her. Don't lie now. You always taught your children that lying was wrong, remember? I didn't raise my voice. I didn't have to. My presence alone was louder than any accusation. A waiter arrived at our table with an extra plate and a bottle of champagne. As he arranged glasses and silverware, everyone kept their faces still, smiles stretched thin, playing the part of the perfect, loving family. What a sham, Grandma, Liam said quietly, leaning toward me just as the waiter stepped away. I didn't know. I thought you knew about the dinner. I know, honey, I replied just as softly, squeezing his hand under the table. It's not your fault. The warmth of his hand grounded me in that moment. A small gesture, but it meant the world. At least one person at this table hadn't forgotten who I was. Daniel cleared his throat, drawing everyone's attention. Well, now that we're all here, he said, stressing the word all with a slight edge of annoyance, let's get on with the party. Mom, you're just in time for dessert. He signaled to the waiter, who began slicing the enormous tiered cake, complete with a bride and groom on top. It must have cost a small fortune. What a beautiful cake, I said, accepting the plate with my slice. Must have been expensive. Not at all, Mom, Daniel said, too quickly. It's not expensive, just a small family celebration, nothing fancy. I looked around the table. Elegant dishes, crystal glasses, fresh floral centerpieces. There was nothing modest about it. Everything reeked of careful planning and money spent, not a cent of which had considered me. Yes, I can see how modest it is, I said, nodding. And so many guests. And here I thought you were having financial trouble. Isn't that why you asked me for $2,000 last month for car repairs, if I'm remembering correctly? One of the guests coughed. The woman seated next to me, the same one I didn't recognize, glanced at Daniel curiously. Mom, he muttered through clenched teeth, his smile fixed in place. Can't we discuss this later, in private? Aren't we in private? I asked, genuinely puzzled. Aren't we in the family circle? Or am I no longer considered part of the family? Sorry, I guess I didn't get the memo. Of course you're family, Erica interjected, her voice a little too bright, a little too loud. We just thought it might be too much for you. This late dinner, all the noise. At your age. At my age, I repeated slowly. Yes, of course, my age. Their excuse clung like smoke, but it couldn't mask the truth. I took a breath. Funny how my age didn't stop me from watching your cats last month, while you and Brian went on your spa weekend, or helping Daniel with his tax returns, or loaning him that $2,000 he never repaid. Silence settled again. Daniel fidgeted with his cufflink, refusing to meet my eyes. Claire stared hard at the pattern on the tablecloth. I wanted to invite you, Mom, Daniel finally said, trying to sound remorseful, I just didn't think you'd be comfortable. You're not a fan of big, loud gatherings. I'm not? I interjected. That's strange. Who hosted Christmas dinner every year? Who planned the block's summer barbecue? Who gathered people to celebrate your father's birthday, even when he was in the hospital? He said nothing. It's not about my age, I continued, calmly but firmly. And it's not about noise. My voice remained steady, though each word was laced with years of swallowed disappointment. It's about the fact that you didn't want to see me. That lying was easier than inviting your own mother. That's not true, Erica started, but I raised my hand. I'm not finished, dear. I didn't come here to make a scene. I didn't come to ruin your party. But I did come hoping against all logic, that maybe this time they'd surprise me. Maybe I was wrong. Maybe I was still wanted. I scanned their faces, tight, confused, fearful. Their smiles faltered, masks slipping just enough to reveal the truth they tried to hide. I came to understand, I said quietly. To understand how my children became the kind of people who could lie to their own mother's face, who could exclude her from a family gathering like she was some sort of... I paused, searching for the word. Like some inconvenient obligation. Grandma, Liam said softly. I didn't know they hadn't invited you. I swear, I thought you were just running late. I put a hand on his shoulder. I know, sweetheart. This isn't about you. In that moment, I saw a glimmer of what Thomas once called the good in our blood. Maybe it hadn't all vanished after all. And I clung to that thought like a lifeline, because the rest of the night was a hollow echo of what family once meant. At that moment, Louis returned with a fresh bottle of champagne. I hope everyone's enjoying the evening, he said, though it was clear from his face that he could feel the heaviness in the air. Everything is just fine, Louis, I replied with a genuine smile. Great restaurant, great service. Always the best for you, Helen, he said as he filled my glass with champagne. I still remember how your pies got me through the endless hunger of my teenage years. No one in Brookdale bakes like you. I felt a rush of warmth to my cheeks. For the first time all evening, I was smiling, for real. You've always been a gentleman, Louis, even when you were just a boy. He returned the smile, but there was understanding in his eyes. Then he turned toward Daniel. Mr. Whitaker, may I ask why your mother wasn't listed among your party guests? He asked casually. There was some confusion with the seating. Daniel nearly choked on his champagne. Yeah, it was a misunderstanding, he stammered. Mom was supposed to come, of course. It's just, this morning she said she wasn't feeling well. That's odd, Louis said smoothly. I could have sworn she told me you said the dinner was cancelled because of your wife's illness. Claire let out a strange sound, half cough, half gasp. Erica stared down at her plate like it might offer some divine escape. Apparently there was a misunderstanding, Daniel repeated, his face flushed. Apparently, Louis echoed, his tone bone-dry. Well, what matters is that we're all here now. Enjoy your evening. He gave my hand one more gentle squeeze before stepping away, leaving the table in heavier silence than before. Daniel broke it first. Mom, I can explain, he said. Claire and we just wanted to spend the evening in a smaller circle. A small circle of 15 people? I said flatly, scanning the table. I mean, without the older generation, he added awkwardly. Claire's parents aren't here, and... You're lying, I interrupted, still calm. Again. Claire's parents passed away 5 years ago. You know that. I attended both funerals. I turned toward Erica's husband. And your in-laws? I saw them at the other table when I walked in. They waved at me. Daniel went an even deeper shade of red, if that were possible. Mom, Erica started to speak. We didn't mean to hurt you, she said. We just thought maybe it would be too much. You've said yourself you've not been feeling well lately. We all talk about our health now and then, dear, I said evenly. But most of us would expect our family to ask how we're feeling, not make decisions for us. I took a sip of champagne. It was excellent, dry, with a subtle citrus and vanilla finish. You know what the saddest part is? I said, looking at all of them. It's not that you didn't invite me, it's that you chose to lie. You didn't just say, Mom, we want to do this without you tonight. Instead, you made up a story, said Claire was sick, made me worry. I even called, offered to bring soup. I shook my head slowly. I raised you to be honest, even when it's hard, even when the truth might hurt, because lies destroy trust, and without trust, there is no family. Daniel's voice trembled. You just didn't want your old mother ruining your night, I finished for him. I get it. I really do. And you know what? You could have told me that. I might have been hurt, but I would have understood. Because I've always respected your choices, even when I didn't agree with them. I finished my champagne and set the glass gently on the table. But instead, you chose to lie. And now that I'm sitting here, I see more than just this one lie. I see all of them. All the times you told me the money was for emergencies, while it was really going to dinners, vacations, new phones. I looked around the table once more. For a second, no one moved. The tension clung to the air like smoke after a fire. Then I reached slowly into my purse. My fingers brushed against the envelope I had tucked there this morning. A decision made not in haste, but in quiet conviction. If they wouldn't hear me with words, then perhaps they'd listen to action. I pulled it out, laid it on the table gently, and looked my children in the eyes. When you said you couldn't visit because of important work and then left town for the weekend, I let the words hang. Daniel opened his mouth, but I stopped him with a hand. I don't want to hear excuses, son. I just want to know, when did you stop respecting your mother? The silence afterward wasn't just quiet, it roared. A wall of invisible weight pressing on every person at the table. The question floated in the air, heavy and sharp. Daniel looked at me like someone caught red-handed. Claire busied herself nervously with her napkin, refusing to meet my eyes. Erica looked like she wished the floor would swallow her whole. Mom? Daniel finally said, lowering his voice to a whisper. Let's not do this here. We can talk later, somewhere more appropriate. More appropriate? I repeated, feeling a kind of icy calm settle over me. You mean somewhere with no witnesses? I mean somewhere we can talk calmly, he said, now sounding like he was lecturing a child. That tone, the one he used to correct Liam, burned more now than it ever had. You're upset, understandably, but this isn't the time or place. And when is the time, Daniel? I asked, still quiet but firm. When you swing by for 5 minutes just to ask for a check, or when Erica drops in for tea, always glancing at her watch. Erica flinched as if I'd slapped her. That's not fair, Mother, she said, voice trembling. I have the store. I have things to do. We all have things to do, dear, I replied, but people make time for those they love. My voice wasn't raised, but every syllable carried decades of overlooked moments and fading hope. Liam shifted in his seat, clearly uncomfortable. Grace stared at all of us with wide eyes, clearly wishing she weren't there. Maybe I should go, she whispered to Liam. No, stay, I said gently, placing a hand on her arm. This isn't about you, and I'm not going to make a scene, no matter what Daniel fears. I turned back to the table. Guests seated farther away had returned to their own conversations, but those nearest, my children, their spouses, a few close friends, were watching me, waiting. I could feel the tension ripple like static between us, brittle and ready to break. I just want you to know that I understand, I continued, eyes fixed on Daniel and Erica. I get it now. I've become a burden, a reminder of aging, a discomfort. I get that it's easier to pretend I'm not here than to accept that one day you'll be like me. Mom, that's not true, Daniel began, but I raised a hand again. Let me finish, son. I've been quiet long enough. It's my turn now. I took a sip of water, gathering myself. Even the glass felt heavier tonight, as if it too knew the weight of what was coming. I know what you've been saying about me. I know you've been discussing my decline, my supposed senility. I glanced toward Daniel and Claire. Your neighbor, Mrs. Benton, mentioned something when we bumped into each other at the pharmacy. She said she was concerned, after hearing you tell her I might be losing it. Claire went pale. Helen, it wasn't, we're just worried, she started, but I cut her off gently. Don't. I know the truth. Just like I know you've already been researching assisted living for me. Sunny Grove, isn't it? The director there is an old classmate of yours, Claire, if I'm not mistaken. My words weren't angry. They were precise, like a scalpel separating truth from denial. Daniel's face had gone ghost white. He shot Claire a look, surprised and questioning, clearly wondering how I knew. It was just in case, he muttered. We just wanted to be ready, in case you needed help. Without telling me, I finished. Without even asking. I finished for him. Without even a single conversation about my wishes, you just decided for me, as if I wasn't capable of making decisions anymore. My voice didn't rise, but it cut through the air sharper than any yell could. I turned toward Erica. And don't think I don't know about your chats with that realtor. About my house. About how it might be listed the moment I'm either gone or moved to a place where I'll be taken care of. Erica flushed. Mom, I was just curious about prices in the market. Of course you were, I nodded, and the fact that the realtor came by while I was at the doctor's was just a wild coincidence. My hands trembled slightly, not with weakness, but with the weight of everything left unsaid for years. There was total silence at the table. Even the unfamiliar guests held their breath. Where did you? Daniel began, but faltered. How do I know? I said, finishing for him. Because I have eyes and ears and neighbors who care about me, unlike my own children. Mrs. Latham saw a man taking pictures around the house, said he looked like a real estate agent. She called me because she was worried. I pulled a plain white envelope from my purse. There was nothing remarkable about it, but the way my children stared at it, you'd think I was holding a lit stick of dynamite. You know what's truly sad? I said, placing the envelope on the table. That you see me as some frail, clueless woman. That you assume I don't know how you avoid my calls, how your visits feel more like obligations than acts of love. My voice quivered for the first time, not from fear, but from the ache of decades being slowly brushed aside. Mom, it's not like that. Erica reached for my hand. I pulled it away. It's exactly like that, dear. And I've asked myself for a long time, why? Why do the children I raised with so much care treat me like I'm a burden? I looked at both of them, and then I realized, it's the house. Daniel and Erica exchanged a look. What do you mean, the house? Daniel asked warily. Our family home, I said, clearly. The one you grew up in. The one you can't wait to inherit. Every creaky stair in that house holds your childhood. And yet, you're just waiting for me to die, or to be too weak to protest, so you can toss me into Sunny Grove and claim it. I opened the envelope and laid the documents on the table. You never asked what I want, what my plans are. You just made up your minds. There was no spite in my tone. Only the exhaustion of a woman who had been planning her exit while her children planned her erasure. Mom, what are you talking about? Daniel asked, his voice growing tense. What plans? I picked up the top sheet and placed it in front of them. I sold the house, I said simply. The silence that followed could have shattered glass. Daniel froze, his hand gripping his wineglass. Erica let out a startled sound, somewhere between a gasp and a sob. What do you mean, you sold it? Daniel finally managed. You couldn't. You wouldn't. But I did, I said calmly. 3 days ago, Mr. Harper, my lawyer, handled it. A lovely young couple with 2 kids bought it. They're full of dreams and plans. They're going to fill that house with life again. My heart aches just saying it, but it was the ache of letting go, not regret. But what about you? Erica stammered, clearly on the verge of tears. Oh, don't you worry about me, I said with a smile. I've rented a cozy little apartment near downtown, just a block from the library. You know how I love to read. An apartment? Daniel blinked as if I'd said I was moving to a mountaintop. But the house? It's our family home, he said. Dad wanted it to stay in the family. Your father wanted me to be happy, I said firmly, and for his children to grow up with integrity. And right now, I was doing both. For him. For me. The table remained silent, as if the room itself held its breath. I looked at the faces around me, some confused, others embarrassed, none of them meeting my eyes. But I wasn't seeking their approval anymore. This wasn't about revenge or drama, it was about truth. And after all the half-truths and polite silence, it was time they heard mine. Slowly, I reached once more into my bag, feeling the cool edge of another envelope. There's more I want to share, I said quietly, my voice steady now. Because closure isn't just about leaving behind a place. It's about choosing who and what truly matters going forward. One of those wishes I can fulfill. I placed the second document on the table. As for the money from the sale of the house, Daniel leaned in, his eyes lighting up with an unmistakable gleam. That spark, so reflexive, so transparent, betrayed exactly where his heart lay. Even now, all he could think about was money. I've donated it, I said, sliding the paper toward him. To fund a new wing at the city library. It'll bear your father's name. Thomas loved books. I figured it was a fitting tribute. You what? Daniel stared at me like I'd suddenly started speaking Russian. It was close to $500,000, I nodded. The house was well kept, and the neighborhood's in high demand. And you just gave it away? Erica looked stunned. Mom, that's a lot of money. Could secure my future? I said, finishing her sentence. But darling, you already have your future. You have your career, your homes, your cars. You don't need my future too. My voice didn't waver, not out of anger, but from the years I spent watching them inch away, assuming I had nothing left to give but what could be tallied. For a fleeting moment, I almost softened. I saw Daniel's jaw tighten, Erica's hands clench on her lap, and I wondered, had I failed them? Or had they failed me? The guilt, buried deep, clawed to the surface, but I forced it down. I had to. I looked at Liam. His head was bowed, eyes clouded with sadness. Not for money, but for everything else that had led to this moment. I have thought about my future, I continued. I reached into my bag and drew out the third document. Daniel and Erica exchanged glances again, but this time I saw it. The flicker of hope. Maybe a bank account? A retirement fund? Some jewelry? I changed my will. Their attention snapped back. Everything I own, my personal savings, jewelry, belongings, I've left to Liam. I laid the copy of the will down. To the only person in this family who sees me as something more than a source of inheritance, who actually sees me. My voice softened when I looked at him, because in a room full of blood ties, he had been the only one bound to me by love. Liam looked up, tears welling. Grandma, I don't need to. I know, sweetheart, I said gently. That's exactly why it's going to you. Don't worry, it's not a fortune. Just something to help you get started. I turned to Daniel, Erica, and the rest. Their faces were frozen, stuck somewhere between disbelief, rage, and stunned silence. You thought I didn't see it, didn't you? I said softly. The way you've treated me these past years, you thought I was too old to notice, too fragile to speak up. I gathered the papers and returned them to the envelope. But I've seen it all. Every ignored call, every visit that lasted only as long as it took to ask for something, every time you lied to my face. Each memory landed like a pebble dropped into a still pond, ripples of pain spreading outward, but never quite fading. My hands trembled just slightly as I tucked the papers back in my bag, not from weakness but from release. Years of biting my tongue, of swallowing tears, finally finding voice. And you know what? I added, voice steady, eyes firm. I still loved you, because you're my children. But love doesn't mean letting someone walk over your dignity. That's something your father taught me, and something I wish I'd taught you better. My voice cracked slightly, not from weakness, but from mourning the mother I had been and the children I thought I had raised. Daniel was the first to recover. Mom, this is crazy, he said, trying to keep his voice even, but I could hear the panic underneath. You can't just take everything from us because of one misunderstanding. A misunderstanding? I echoed, genuinely surprised. Years of avoidance, lies, gaslighting? Is that what we're calling it now? Mom, we were worried about you. Erica jumped in, her voice unsteady but her eyes dry. You lived alone. That house was too big for you. And that's why you decided to sell it without even speaking to me? I cut in. That's not what worry looks like, darling. Worry is checking in. Worry is asking how I'm doing, offering to help, not waiting until I'm too weak to resist so you can quietly run my life. There was no venom in my words, only the sorrow of finally saying aloud what I'd carried for too long. Claire, who'd been quiet until now, suddenly spoke. Edith, I think you're being unfair. We've always cared about you, always shown you respect. I turned to Claire. Then why, when I needed help paying for medication that wasn't covered by insurance, why did Daniel say you were having financial problems, only for you to take off to the Bahamas a week later? Claire flushed and looked down. It was a planned vacation, she murmured. We couldn't cancel it. Of course, I said, nodding. Vacations are more important than an old mother's health. I understand. I stood up, gathering my purse. Well, I won't ruin your evening with my presence any longer. I've said what I needed to say. You're leaving? Erica looked baffled. But what, the money? I finished for her. It's gone, sweetheart. The house, the savings, the inheritance you've been waiting on. There's only me, your mother. And she's finally decided to live for herself instead of hoping you might find 5 minutes in your busy lives to visit. Liam rose quickly. I'll walk you out, Grandma. Thank you, sweetheart, but there's no need, I said, resting a hand on his shoulder. Stay. Finish your dinner, I'll see you tomorrow. I turned back to the rest of them. As for the rest of you, well, that's up to you. And with that, I walked out. I could feel their eyes, their shock, and maybe even some guilt. Other diners looked too. Let them. I didn't care. For the first time in years, I felt light, unburdened, free from the weight of unmet expectations, false hopes, and disappointments. Louis was waiting by the entrance. Leaving already, Edith? He asked, his voice low, tinged with a quiet sadness. I hope it's not because of the service. I smiled at him. Louis, your service is always excellent. It's just time I went home. Let me call you a cab, he offered, walking beside me. I'd appreciate that. While we waited, Louis looked at me with concern. Tense atmosphere at your table. Family matters, I said with a small smile. Sometimes the truth is bitter, but necessary. He nodded. Like medicine. Exactly, I agreed. Like bitter medicine. When the cab pulled up, Louis stepped forward and opened the door for me. Before I got in, he said something that caught me off guard. You know, Edith, I've always admired you. Even back when I was just the kid across the street, you were always real, no pretenses, no nonsense. Thank you, Louis, I said, touched. That means more than you know. I heard about the library donation, he added. It's a beautiful tribute. Thomas would be proud. I paused halfway into the cab. You know about that? This is Brookdale, Edith, he said with a soft smile. Word gets around, especially when someone does something that generous. I nodded. It was comforting, in an odd way, that the town already knew, that the decision was now real and public. It was the right thing to do, I said, finally sitting down. I have no doubt it was, Louis said seriously. And Edith, if you ever need to talk or just share a cup of tea, my door's always open. I'll remember that, I promised. As the cab pulled away from Cedar Hill, I didn't look back. I didn't want to see if my children came outside to say goodbye, or if they stayed in, whispering among themselves. It didn't matter anymore. I had done what I should have done long ago. I had taken my life back, and though my heart was heavy with the truth of who my children had become, I felt strangely light, like I had finally set down a weight I didn't even realize I was carrying. The cab turned the corner, and the Cedar Hill restaurant vanished from sight, along with the part of my life I'd allowed others to control. The part where I kept waiting for love and attention from people who either couldn't or wouldn't give it. For years, I had equated silence with strength, thinking endurance meant love. But that night, I chose something else, respect for myself. The spring sun was shining through the windows of my new apartment, warming the cozy space with golden light. I sat in my armchair, a cup of morning tea in hand, and watched the city awaken. From the third floor, I had a clear view of Brookdale's Central Square. Neat flower beds, the old fountain trickling softly, the hum of life just beginning. Directly across the street stood the city library, my new second home. It had been 3 months since that night at Cedar Hill. 3 months since I'd turned a page in my life and started writing a new chapter. Change wasn't easy. I'd spent most of my life in the same house, where every wall echoed with memories. I used to think leaving that house would feel like abandoning my past, but instead it felt like stepping out from under a shadow. But this small apartment, with its pale walls and uncluttered shelves, gave me something I hadn't felt in years. Freedom. The phone rang, snapping me from my thoughts. I glanced at the screen. Daniel, his 4th call this week. I set the phone down without answering. If it was important, he'd leave a message. Ever since that dinner, it was like my children suddenly remembered I existed. The initial wave had been anger, calls demanding to know how I could sell the house, how I could disinherit them. But when they realized guilt-tripping wouldn't work, the tone shifted. Daniel started showing up with flowers and a heavy-hearted expression, talking about misunderstandings, about how much they loved me. Erica called almost daily, offering to help decorate the apartment, suggesting lunch. Even Claire sent a fruit basket with a neatly written apology card. I didn't shut them out entirely. I accepted their gestures with polite smiles. But I wasn't rushing back into the roles we used to play. This time, the boundaries were mine to set, and I set them not out of bitterness, but out of clarity. They needed to learn that trust, once broken, didn't just bounce back. It had to be earned. And I knew, deep down, what their sudden attention was really about. They were hoping the donation was just a bluff, that maybe the money from the house was still sitting somewhere, untouched. Daniel even tried to carefully suggest that perhaps I'd been too quick in giving it away. When I confirmed that everything had been finalized and the donation was already in the library's account, his expression changed. The mask slipped. I saw him, clearly and without illusion. Calculating, disappointed not in me, but in the lost inheritance. And that was the final gift that dinner had given me. Vision without illusion. The phone rang again, this time Liam. "Good morning, Grandma," he said, cheerful as always. "How are you today?" "Good morning, sweetheart," I answered, smiling without meaning to. "The view is lovely as always. I'm just enjoying my tea and thinking about the big day ahead." "You remembered it's the library opening today, right?" Excitement bubbled in his voice. "I'll pick you up at 3, like we planned." "Of course, I remembered," I said, glancing at the dress I'd set out the night before. A dark blue one with a soft silver pattern, perfect for the occasion. After we hung up, I took another sip of tea. Today was a big day, the grand opening of the new wing at the library, the George Thornberry wing. A place for children to explore books just as George had loved to do. A place filled with stories and possibilities. A place where his name would live on, tied forever to knowledge and imagination. He would have been proud. And so was I. With my tea in hand, I started getting ready for my morning shift at the library. I volunteered there 3 times a week, mostly helping out in the children's department. I read fairy tales to little ones, helped school-aged kids find books for their projects, and sometimes just talked to teenagers, many of whom came to the library less for the books and more for the calm, the quiet, and the rare feeling of being heard. In those moments, surrounded by eager eyes and curious minds, I felt more valued than I had in years. That work gave me a sense of purpose I hadn't felt in so long. Those children didn't see me as a burden or a potential source of inheritance. They saw me as someone who could offer something: knowledge, attention, kindness. And in return, they gave me something I hadn't realized I'd missed: genuine appreciation. On my way to the library, I ran into Martha Finch, my new neighbor and friend, an energetic widow in her 70s and a retired math teacher. She had been one of the first people to help me settle into my new apartment. "Edith," she called, waving. "I'm headed to the bakery. Want me to bring back some fresh bread?" "Thank you, Martha. I'm good," I smiled. "It's a big day today. I'll be having lunch in town after the opening ceremony." "Oh yes," she said with a knowing nod. "Today's the grand opening of the George Wing. What a wonderful thing you've done, Edith. Such a tribute to your husband." I thanked her and kept walking. After that night at Cedar Hill, word of my donation spread quickly through Brookdale. Reactions were mixed. Some saw me as a hero. Others whispered that I was just an old woman who had lost her mind and disinherited her children. But I had finally made a choice for myself, without fear or guilt, and I stood by it. I didn't care. I knew what I'd done and why I did it. At the library, preparations were already in full swing. Workers were setting up a small stage in front of the new wing. Volunteers were hanging garlands and arranging rows of chairs. Miss Prentice, the head librarian, was darting around giving orders with surprising energy for someone her age. "Edith," she exclaimed when she saw me. "So glad you're here. We could use your help picking the books for the new display shelves, especially in the children's section. Could you pick what we should showcase first?" I agreed happily. The next few hours were spent combing through shelves and selecting titles, from timeless fairy tales to modern stories that captured young minds. I thought about what different age groups would enjoy, what would make them want to turn the next page. It was peaceful, even a little nostalgic. Each book I chose carried a memory of my own children's early years, nights filled with stories, giggles, and sleepy eyes. Those memories didn't hurt as much anymore. I'd come to terms with the way things had turned out. My children hadn't grown into the kind of people I hoped they would, but they were still my children. I still loved them, but now that love was more distant, more realistic, no longer clouded by false hopes or expectations. It was love reshaped by truth. At noon, I walked back home to rest before the evening ceremony. As I stepped inside, I noticed the light blinking on the answering machine. New messages. The first one was from Daniel. "Mom, It's me. I just wanted to let you know Kelsey and I are coming to the library opening tonight. I know you didn't invite us, but it's a community event and we want to support you. Please call me back if you get this. The second message was from Erica. Mom, I'm calling to say I won't be able to make it to the ceremony today. I've got a last-minute order for a wedding bouquet, and I can't push it off. I know it's an important day for you. I'm really sorry. I'll call you tonight to hear how it went. I smiled, shaking my head. Some things never change. Daniel probably still believed his appearance might warm me up, make me reconsider the inheritance, and Erica, always with a reason not to show up. The rush order excuse was practically a tradition by now. After a light lunch, I started getting ready for the ceremony. I took a shower, styled my hair, and put on that same dark blue dress and the pearl necklace, George's anniversary gift. Once I was done, I sat down in a chair to rest before Reed arrived. My eyes wandered to the picture of George on the dresser, the only one I'd taken from the old house. It captured him just the way I loved him best. Laughing, with a slight streak of gray in his hair and deep smile lines etched around his eyes. I reached out and gently touched the frame. I miss you, I whispered. A soft ache tugged at my chest, the kind of ache that doesn't scream but lingers, steady and familiar. What would you say if you could see me now, George? I asked him in my thoughts. Would you approve of everything I've done? And in my heart I could almost hear him. You're finally living for yourself, Edith. Of course I approve. The doorbell rang. Reed was here. He looked sharp and excited in a fitted suit, and in that moment, he looked more like his grandfather than ever. Grandma, you look amazing, he said, giving me a kiss on the cheek. Are you ready for your big moment? I grinned and picked up my purse. I wouldn't call it a big moment. But yeah, I'm ready. On the way to the library, Reed chatted about school, his summer plans, and how he and Audrey were thinking about a little road trip down the coast. You should come with us, Grandma, he said suddenly. Quiet beaches, cute little towns, great food. Honey, you're a young couple, I said with a smile. You don't need your grandma tagging along as a third wheel. You'd never be a third wheel. Reed replied seriously. Not for me, not for Audrey. She really wants you to come too. She says you tell the best stories. I felt something stir deep inside, an unfamiliar flutter of anticipation. Was it really so simple? To say yes to joy again? To let myself be wanted, not just needed? His words touched me. Maybe I really could join them, just for a few days. A trip with no obligations, just for fun. Something new. I'll think about it, I promised, but let's focus on today. When we arrived at the library, the square in front was already full. White chairs had been set up in neat rows, nearly all taken. The new wing, built with pale bricks and shining glass, caught the afternoon sun beautifully. Above its entrance hung a golden plaque, still covered with cloth, the George Thornberry wing. Miss Prentice met us at the door, her face glowing with excitement. Edith, at last, you're here. We've been waiting. Your seat is in the front row, of course, and your grandson's too. She led us forward to the seats of honor. Out of the corner of my eye, I spotted Daniel and Kelsey in the crowd, standing awkwardly off to the side. When Daniel saw me, he waved and started walking over. I nodded politely, but followed Miss Prentice without stopping. As I took my seat, I glanced around the crowd. So many familiar faces. Neighbors from the old neighborhood. New friends from my building. Parents of the kids I read to at the library. And among them, I saw Louis Quinlan in a light gray suit. He caught my eye, smiled, and gave a respectful nod. My breath caught for half a second. That nod, it held no pity, no judgment, just warmth. And in that tiny exchange, I felt an affirmation I hadn't even known I needed. After that night at Cedar Hill, Louis and I had seen each other a few more times. He'd stopped by the library just passing through, or so he said. He invited me for coffee once or twice, asked about my new apartment. With him, I didn't feel like an old woman. I just felt like a woman. Someone interesting. Someone seen. The ceremony began with a speech from the mayor. Something about how important education and culture were for small towns like ours. Miss Prentice spoke next, explaining how the library had long needed to expand and how my donation had made that dream a reality. And now, she said with pride, I'd like to welcome to the stage the woman who made all this possible, Mrs. Edith Thornberry. Applause broke out. I rose and stepped onto the stage. I'd never liked public speaking, but today I felt strangely at peace. I knew exactly what I needed to say, and I knew the words would be right. "Good afternoon, friends," I began as the applause softened. "I'm no great speaker, so I'll keep this brief." I glanced around at the gathered faces. "This wing is named in honor of my husband, George Thornberry, a man who loved two things above all else, his family and books." I paused, letting the weight of the words sink in. Books open doors to new worlds. They teach us to dream, to feel, to think. They show us we're not alone in our thoughts or our feelings. George believed that deeply. He read to our kids every single night, even when he came home exhausted. He truly believed a single good book could change a child's life. As I spoke, I could feel his presence beside me, like a comforting hand on my shoulder. It gave me the strength to keep going, even as my heart tightened with longing. I felt my voice catch as I spoke his name, a lump in my throat reminding me how much I still missed him. Tears pricked behind my eyes, but I held them back, determined to speak for both of us. From the stage, I saw Daniel and Kelsey draw a little closer. Daniel watching me tensely, as if he feared I might say something to shame him. My hope is that this new wing becomes a place where Blue Springs' children can discover books that will shape their lives, just like George believed. A place where they'll learn that the most important things in life are not possessions, but knowledge, love, and kindness. I looked directly at my children. Sometimes we forget those simple truths. We get too caught up chasing things that don't matter. But it's never too late to remember. And it's never too late to change. I held that moment, letting it linger, not as a scolding, but as a hope. That maybe something in my words would reach their hearts. A hush fell over me, and I felt my heart pounding. This was more than words. It was my lifeline reaching out to them. With that, I nodded toward Miss Prentice to signal I was done. The audience broke into warm, full applause. I felt a little lightheaded as I stepped down from the stage, where Reed waited with a proud smile. Next on the program was the unveiling of George's name plaque. Someone handed me oversized ceremonial scissors. Flashbulbs went off as I cut the ribbon, and applause echoed again. Afterward, a casual reception began, with champagne, light hors d'oeuvres, and a tour of the new wing. One by one, people came up to thank and congratulate me. Among them were Daniel and Kelsey. "Mom, that was really something," Daniel said, shifting awkwardly. "Dad would have been proud." "Yes," I said simply. "He would have been, especially if he saw his grandson Reed helping organize this whole event. George always admired loyalty and family." Daniel flinched at the not-so-subtle point. "Mom, I know what I did was wrong, but maybe we can fix it? Start again?" My chest tightened. A part of me wanted to wrap my arms around him and forget everything. But I couldn't ignore the months, years of being sidelined. I needed to protect my heart, just this once. "Maybe," I said evenly, "but it takes time and trust. And trust, Daniel, that has to be earned." Just then, I saw Louis Quinlan making his way over, and oddly enough, I felt a little relieved. "Sorry to interrupt," he said gently. "Edith, Miss Prentice said there are some kids already exploring the new section, and she thought you might want to say a few words to them." "Of course," I said, then turned to Daniel. "Excuse me, duty calls." Louis offered me his hand, and I took it with gratitude. But instead of leading me back toward the building, he guided me toward a quieter corner of the garden. "She's not actually looking for me, is she?" I asked with a knowing smile. "Guilty," Louis admitted. "Thought you could use an escape." I sighed in relief, the tension draining away as I realized I didn't have to stay on guard every moment. "Thank you, it's not easy. They're still my kids, no matter what." "I understand," Louis said, nodding. "Family's always complicated, but you're right. Trust doesn't come free." We sat down together on a shaded bench beneath a tall oak tree. From where we sat, we could see the new library wing, the gold plaque bearing George's name glowing in the sunlight. "It's beautiful," Louis said. "The architect did a fine job making it all fit together." "Yes," I agreed softly. "George would have liked this." We sat in silence for a moment, the soft murmur of the reception drifting in the background, and just enjoyed the quiet calm of that little garden. "By the way," Louis said suddenly, "next weekend, the town theater is doing King Lear. I already have 2 tickets, but my sister, who was supposed to come with me, has to leave unexpectedly to visit her daughter. Would you like to come instead?" I turned to look at him, a bit surprised. There was a softness in his expression, something warm, hopeful, maybe even uncertain, that made my heart skip just a little. "I'd love to," I answered before I could second-guess myself. Louis lit up. "Great, I'll pick you up at 6. The play starts at 7, but I thought we could grab dinner beforehand." "That sounds wonderful," I said, smiling. And to my surprise, I actually felt a flutter of excitement I hadn't felt in years. We walked back toward the celebration, where Reed was already scanning the crowd for me. "Grandma, there you are," he said, relieved. "Miss Prentice wants you to meet the kids from the summer reading group." "Coming, sweetheart." I turned to Louis. "Duty really does call this time." He smiled and gave a small, gentlemanly bow. "I'll see you this weekend, Edith." The next 2 hours passed in a blur, meeting people, taking pictures, answering questions from the local paper. I spoke with the kids from the reading club, told them about George's favorite books, and promised to read one aloud at the next class. Parents came up to thank me, to say how much the new wing would mean to their children. It was overwhelming, but in the best way. When the ceremony wound down and most of the guests had left, Reed and I got in his car to head home. "It was a beautiful day," he said, turning the key in the ignition. "You did good, Grandma. Thanks, honey." I leaned back in my seat, tired but content. "Yes, it really was a special day." "I saw you talking to Mr. Quinlan," Reed smirked. "You two seem to get along pretty well." I could feel my cheeks warm. "He's a thoughtful man, easy to talk to." "Is that all?" Reed was clearly enjoying teasing me. "I don't know. I think there's something there." "Oh, don't be silly." I waved him off, but I couldn't stop smiling. "At my age, I'm not looking for romance." "Why not?" Reed replied without missing a beat. "Age isn't a barrier to happiness, and I've seen how he looks at you, the way I look at Audrey." I didn't answer right away, but his words echoed in my mind. Was age really a limitation? In these past 3 months, hadn't I proven that life could begin again, anytime, if I allowed it? As we pulled up to my building, I noticed a familiar car parked along the curb. Thelma. She was sitting on the bench near the driveway, bouquet in hand, watching our car approach. She stood up the moment she saw us. "Mom," she said as I stepped out. "I'm so glad I made it. The order wrapped up earlier than I expected, so I decided to come after all. I didn't want to miss your big day." She held out the flowers, arranged just like the ones she used to make at the shop, not store-bought. Her personal touch was unmistakable. "They're lovely, sweetheart. Thank you," I said as I took them gently. "May I come in?" she asked hesitantly, eyes flicking to the ground. "If you're not too tired." I studied her face, the way she twisted the strap of her purse, the tension in her shoulders. Maybe she was trying. Maybe she really did feel sorry. "Sure," I said, opening the front door. "Come on in." "Reed? Are you coming in too?" I asked Reed. "No, Grandma. I've got a meeting with Audrey," he said, kissing me on the cheek. "I'll call you tomorrow." I watched him go, a familiar ache in my chest. Not loneliness exactly, but the bittersweet weight of love tinged with quiet pride. Thelma and I took the elevator up to my apartment. It was her first time visiting, and I could see the surprise on her face. Maybe she'd expected something smaller or more modest, not this bright, spacious apartment with fresh furniture and a pleasant view of the town below. "It's very nice," she said finally. "Cozy." "Thank you," I replied, placing the bouquet in a vase. The scent of fresh flowers filled the room, and for a moment it felt like the past and present had gently intertwined. "Tea? Coffee?" "Tea, if I may." While I boiled water and prepared the tray, Thelma walked slowly around the room, studying the framed photos on the walls. Some old, taken back at the house, and many new ones. Pictures of me with the children at the library, with new friends, and with Reed and Audrey during a picnic. I noticed her pause longer at one image, me reading a story to a group of children, surrounded by their eager little faces. Her expression softened, an unspoken memory flickering behind her eyes. "You have a busy life," she remarked when I returned to the living room with the tea. "I didn't realize you were so active." "Neither did I said with a soft smile, pouring the tea into our cups. "A lot of people didn't." We sat at a small table by the window. Thelma seemed unsure of how to begin. She stirred her tea and took a few slow sips before finally speaking. "The ceremony was beautiful. Wesley called me afterward. He said he was impressed." "I'm glad it went well," I said, taking a sip of my own tea. I watched her carefully, searching her eyes for sincerity, or something more. Mom? Thelma took a breath, clearly trying to find the right words. I owe you an apology, for the restaurant, and for all the years before that. I've done wrong. I waited silently, giving her the space to go on. I don't know how it got this way, she continued, eyes fixed on her teacup. We used to be close. Then life got in the way. The shop, the stress, everything. I forgot you're not just Mom. You're a person with feelings, with your own plans. Her voice trembled slightly, as if she'd carried the weight of that regret for far too long. For the first time in a long while, I saw genuine sincerity in her eyes. Thank you, Thelma, I said gently. Those words mean more than you know. I'm not asking you to forgive me right away, she said, turning the teacup nervously. I understand now that trust doesn't come back overnight, but I want to try. I want to be part of your life again, not just the daughter who calls once a month. Hope stirred in my heart, cautious and fragile. I looked at her, really looked at her, not just as my grown daughter, but as the child I once knew. Maybe that child still existed, somewhere beneath the adult anxieties and regrets. I hope so, I said softly. And you're right, trust comes back slowly, day by day. We sat and talked for hours, far into the evening. Not just small talk or obligations, but a real conversation. The kind we hadn't shared in years. I felt her growing earnestness, and with each word, the walls between us felt a little less imposing. When Thelma finally left, promising to come back that weekend, I stood at the window for a while, gazing at the twilight blanketing the city. The lights shimmered gently in the distance. A calm certainty washed over me. The chapters ahead would be written on my terms. My new life was just beginning. A life where I wasn't only a mother or a grandmother or a widow. Dear friend, sometimes the deepest wounds aren't the ones carved by chance, but by those we once believed would stand by us unconditionally. Yet the Stoics remind us, we cannot control others' actions, only our response. Choosing to stand up for your own worth is never selfish. It's the first act of healing, and sometimes the greatest courage is in letting go of what weighs your heart down, so you can walk lighter into tomorrow. Remember, you are not defined by the love withheld from you, but by the love you choose to give yourself. Stay true, stay brave, and never forget, you deserve a life where you are seen, heard, and valued. If this story moved you even a little, please take a moment to like, share, or subscribe. Your support helps us keep bringing you stories that matter, and stories that remind us we're never alone. Dear friend, sometimes the deepest wounds aren't the ones carved by chance, but by those we once believed would stand by us unconditionally. Yet the Stoics remind us, we cannot control others' actions, only our response. Choosing to stand up for your own worth is never selfish, it's the first act of healing. And sometimes the greatest courage is in letting go of what weighs your heart down, so you can walk lighter into tomorrow. Remember, you are not defined by the love withheld from you, but by the love you choose to give yourself. Stay true, stay brave, and never forget, you deserve a life where you are seen, heard, and valued. If this story moved you even a little, please take a moment to like, share, or subscribe. Your support helps us keep bringing you stories that matter, and stories that remind us we're never alone.